anybody attacking him. How would he do in 2 early tests? We'll ask Governor Stephen Merrill of New Hampshire, home of the first primary next year, and Jeb Bush of Florida, who's heading up a Republican straw poll in that key state next month. Then we'll get some very different views on Powell's conservative credentials from David Keene of the American Conservative Union and Bill Bennett of Empower America. The Powell candidacy on Face the Nation.
Face the Nation with Chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer. And now from CBS News in Washington, Bob Schieffer.
And welcome again to the broadcast. Well, no excuses. We're just going to talk politics today. It's all that anyone in politics is talking about, so we've decided to talk about Colin Powell, too. Is he going to run, and what happens if he does? Our on-the-scene reporters in 2 key battlegrounds this morning are Stephen Merrill, who's the governor of New Hampshire, the home of the first primary next year, and Jeb Bush, who ran for governor of Florida last time and is heading up Presidency 3, a Republican straw poll to be held in Florida next month to test the strength of the various candidates there. It's non-binding, of course, but it's being closely watched. Mr. Bush, let me start with you because your straw poll on November 18th is going to be something that all the political reporters are going to be tracking. I understand that you are holding a place on the ballot for Colin Powell. Do you have any indication yet that he's going to announce before November 18th?
No, I don't. I've not talked to anybody in the Powell campaign. We don't know what he's going to do, but I hope if he runs as a Republican. And if he does run, he'll be invited to Presidency 3, and he will be on the ballot if he intends to come to speak.
Do you hope he will run?
I hope he does, because I believe in competition, and I think it will make all the candidates and their messages better. Bill Clinton's going to be tough to beat. I think we can beat him, but competition in the primary will make it even better. Colin Powell is certainly qualified to serve. He is a man of character, and I hope he does run as a Republican.
We were told that some of the delegates to that convention where you're going to hold a straw poll are actually getting calls from pollsters and others sounding them out about how they might feel about a Powell candidacy. Do you know anything about that?
Well, our poor delegates are feeling like they live in Iowa or New Hampshire. They're getting calls from every campaign, and I can't tell you where all these calls are coming from, but all the other candidates are waging very effective campaigns down here, and we're excited about that. I think they're going to be better candidates learning about the issues from the Florida perspective, Florida benefits, and if Powell decides to run, he will be invited to participate.
Well, let's go up to the place where the first primary will be held next year. Governor Merrill, you're on the scene there. The CBS News poll comes out yesterday and shows that if Colin Powell should get into the race, he would be the favorite among Republicans. Republicans have been coming up there to New Hampshire for 6 months now. How do you explain the fact that after all that campaigning, that here's someone who hasn't announced yet seems to be more popular than any of them?
Bob, it's rather remarkable. The front runner in New Hampshire right now is Bob Dole. We like him because he's been specific on the issues. The other huge name in the race right now is Colin Powell. We seem to like him because he hasn't been specific on the issues. It really doesn't make any sense. I think it is a little bit early, and when General Powell articulates his positions on issues, that will be the test to see if the Republicans still will support him. They will obviously like him as a man. He has a tremendous aura about him. But the question is, will they vote for him for president? They like him as a general. Will they vote for him as a president once they know his specific views on specific issues?
Well, now, you remained uncommitted up until this point. Is this because you've been waiting for someone else to announce?
Actually, it is not. I would be interested if General Powell gets into the race, but I think it's a decision that only he can make with his wife and family. I have really waited to make sure that all of the candidates have an opportunity to get their message out in the first-in-the-nation primary state. And New Hampshire voters are independent, and they're not looking necessarily for their governor to tell them how to vote. And I think I've given every candidate up here a chance to get their message out to the voters of New Hampshire, which is the critical thing. We are very specific about our candidates and our issues.
Could you endorse Colin Powell of what you know of him now?
Bob, the answer, I try to give very specific answers. Unfortunately, the answer to that is yes, if. Yes, if General Powell does not fight with the conservative movement, if General Powell does not fight with those that have taken the party so far since 1992 and have really brought about a tremendous change, some even call it a revolution, since 1994. If General Powell feels comfortable with those issues and is willing to push that agenda for less government, lower taxes, and the values that pull us together as a people, not apart, and then we could support him.
Let me go back to Florida now. Mr. Bush, some Republicans are saying it's really not fair for you to be holding a place on the ballot for Colin Powell because all the other candidates are down there working the precincts, talking to the voters that he's not even announced yet. How do you respond to that?
Well, if we decided that Colin Powell, if he decided to run, that he would not, we didn't invite him, we would make the whole process totally irrelevant, and that is not what we want to do. We want to make this a relevant part of the process to elect the next president of the United States. Bill Clinton is very vulnerable in the state of Florida, but if we don't include one of the most viable candidates, I think it would look very foolish.
All right, well, I guess the obvious follow-up then is, let's say he hasn't made his decision by November 18th. Would you go ahead and put him on the ballot in that case?
No, he has to announce his intentions to run for president as a Republican and participate by coming and speaking. And if he does, I think it will add a tremendous excitement to the convention. But if it doesn't, we've got excellent candidates that have worked very hard, and Presidency 3 will be a viable part of this process, and all the candidates that have participated will benefit.
All right, and one more question for you, Governor, up in New Hampshire. Do you agree with those analysts who say that if Powell does decide to become a candidate, he must win New Hampshire to be viable?
Well, I do. I think that we have a way of picking presidential candidates. We ask very specific questions. We like people, and we like their issues. But I must tell you that I think in order to be elected president, Colin Powell will have to get into New Hampshire. He'll have to walk the streets, the churches, the synagogues, the businesses. He'll have to connect with the voters up here. We're very fair, but we want him to come up. We want him to spend some time here, and we'd look forward to that if that's what he decides to do.
All right. Well, I thank both of you for giving us an on-the-scene report this morning. When we come back, we're going to talk to someone who thinks maybe this is not such a good idea in a minute.
This portion of Face the Nation is sponsored by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, ADM, Supermarket to the World, and by the Document Company, Xerox.
No matter how you try to spoon it out, or squeeze it out, or pour it out, you can never get the fat out of sausage. But now there's breakfast links from Green Giant. They're all vegetable with no cholesterol and 81% less fat than pork sausage. And the taste? They're everything you'd expect from the Giant. Breakfast links and breakfast patties from Green Giant.
Ho, ho, ho.
When you want the flavor, not all the fat.
This is a document in the digital office where you capture ideas and share them effortlessly. Whether they're on paper or on your screen, this is the space where Xerox works, giving you a simpler way to do good work.
Well, we're talking about Colin Powell, and we're back now with David Keene, the chairman of the American Conservative Union and a longtime advisor over the years, Republican candidate, the Senate Majority Leader Bob Dole. With us also Ron Brownstein of the Los Angeles Times to join in the questioning. You heard what Governor Merrill said, Mr. Keene. He said he could endorse Colin Powell if.
That's right.
What do you take? You're part of the conservative movement. What do you take that
part of the
mean?
if, I guess. I think that what Steve Merrill said is just about right. And my problem with Colin Powell is twofold. One, we have a number of contenders at this point who you don't have to put the if in about, who are appealing to the conservative majority within the party on the basis of shared values and on the basis of a commitment to that general direction. But secondly, and more importantly, I think that Colin Powell, in his initial remarks during the book tour, and before he began to start to hedge in the last week as his head was turned and he really seriously began considering a run, I think he's removing the if. I think he's saying, no, I don't share your goals, and perhaps if I do run, what I want to do is fight with you.
One of your fellow conservatives, Gary Bauer of the Family Research Council, called Powell Bill Clinton with medals. Do you agree with that definition?
I think that's a little harsh. I think, obviously, Colin Powell is, in my mind, superior to Bill Clinton on a whole range of fronts. That's not so much the problem. I think that Colin Powell is indeed a Republican, and I don't fault his entering the Republican primaries. The problem is, and what I've said, is that conservatives have no reason to support a Powell candidacy because Powell represents a worldview that is shared by a small segment of the party and which is antithetical to the direction the party has been going in so successfully for the last few years.
What are the positions from General Powell that most concern you? What has he said so far that most worries you?
Well, he's talked vaguely about a lot of things, from the right to life position to the gays in the military, which he's backed off from his active military days, to a number of things. The real concern, though, is sort of his identification with a dead wing of the party, if you will. He's described himself as a Rockefeller Republican. He said that if he gets into it, part of his goal would be to revitalize this portion of the party and give it the vitality to contend for leadership with the conservative wing of the party. That is the next thing to a declaration of war on the conservative wing of the party, and I just don't see any reason why conservatives would support that kind of a position.
With the polling showing, though, that Powell right now looks like by far the strongest general election candidate, are you saying you'd rather control the party than control the White House?
No, not necessarily at all. I fault a lot of that polling because at this point, Colin Powell, popular as he is a celebrity, not a candidate. Things change when you become a candidate. You remember back in 1979, before Teddy Kennedy declared against Jimmy Carter, all the polls said he could whip him easily. The next week, voters said, just kidding. When Colin Powell becomes a candidate, if he in fact does, and I don't know whether he will or not, the world changes. He has to get specific. That changes things. He has to deal with these issues. That changes things. He begins to be compared as a real alternative to other potential nominees, and that changes things.
Let me just ask you this. If let's say that he gets into it, or he doesn't get into it, and Bob Dole gets the nomination, or somebody else gets the nomination, is Colin Powell so non-conservative or liberal, or however you want to phrase it, that you would be against the nominee putting him on the ticket as a vice president?
As of today, if you were picking the nominee today, I'd say yes. As of next August, it's hard to say. You know, those things take place at a specific time, and a candidate is constantly defining and redefining himself. So I think it would be foolhardy to say what Colin Powell is going to be next August. But in terms of the presidency, in terms of the nomination, I just can't see a reason why a conservative would support him.
It's one thing for conservatives to vote for someone else in the primaries. It'd be quite another for the major institutions of the conservative movement to mobilize against Colin Powell if he becomes a candidate.
That's an entirely different question.
Would you expect the American Conservative Union, the National Rifle Association, the Christian Coalition, these kinds of groups to actively work against him if he gets into the race?
If he were the nominee?
No, if he gets into the race as a primary candidate.
I can't speak for other organizations. I think that most conservatives would be opposed to his nomination.
And if he was the nominee, would you expect an independent third-party candidacy on the right, perhaps a pro-life
Not that I'd have
candidate?
anything to do with it.
But you're saying that you would try to mobilize at least your organization against the Powell candidacy if he gets into this. And what would be the single thing that you would you're most uncomfortable with about him?
What I'm uncomfortable with is the fact that if you take the totality of his statements, he seems hostile to the direction that the Republican Party is going in. And that's a real problem. His outreach has not been to conservatives from the beginning. His outreach has been to the liberal side of the party. In New Hampshire, you should have asked Steve Merrill, who is it that's supporting Colin Powell up there? It's almost impossible for him to get conservative support because of the people. The same is true across the country. Whether he sees himself this way or not, he's seen by others as a vehicle to be used in an attempt to retake a party that wing has lost out in. And I think that it would be foolish for conservatives to aid and abet that.
All right, we're going to leave it there. We're going to get a totally different view on this from another conservative, Bill Bennett, when we come back.
Corn. Not only is it America's most abundant crop, it's also the most versatile. At the Archer Daniels Midland Company, we get golden corn oil from it, as well as corn sweeteners, ethanol, and protein products used in animal feeds. Today, we're extracting even more sophisticated value-added products from corn. Products such as citric acid, which gives candies and fruit-flavored beverages their tangy flavor. and lysine, an amino acid that optimizes the nutrition of poultry and swine feeds. But even this list is far from complete. Right now, we're developing additional value-added products from corn, along with innovative applications for them. Because at ADM, we believe the potential of this crop is nearly as great as its supply. ADM, supermarket to the world.
From IBM. See and hear me at Radio Shack.
No one gives you more ways to add the impact of color to black and white documents. Xerox Color. A simpler way to do good work.
Ebola. It's one of the deadliest viruses known to man. An unstoppable killer? Not so fast. Dr. Bob Arnott investigates a bold claim. A cure for Ebola. Monday.
Well, we're still talking about Colin Powell. We're back now with Bill Bennett, one of the leading conservatives, I would say, in this country, the author of the Book of Virtues, and someone who talks to Colin Powell. Let's ask the big question. Do you think he's going to run? Have you talked to him?
I've talked to him. I don't know. I think it's a close call. I have sense that I know he's looking at it very, very carefully. This is a guy who does things in a very systematic way. You know, go on book tour, sell 9 gazillion books. 2, consider running for president. 3, go fix your Volvos in his backyard. You know, that's his hobby. He's taking it very seriously.
But my sense of it is that that you seem to think he's going to run. I sense that you really hope he's going to.
Well, I hope he does. I haven't endorsed him, and I would need to see more and hear more before I could. But I think it's very good for the party. Look, a party that has running for president Pat Buchanan, Mauree Taylor, and Arlen Specter can sure as heck make room for Colin Powell. And I think the behavior of some of my colleagues and friends saying, stay out, don't do it, you're not conservative enough is a bad idea. This man is a hero. He's extremely well respected by the American people. Of course we want him in our party.
Well, you heard David Keene just now say that he thinks he represents the dead wing of the Republican Party.
Well, again, I think we need to hear more from Colin Powell. But one thing on which I think David Keene is mistaken, self-described conservative Republicans in New Hampshire favor Colin Powell over Bob Dole. That's in the Standard this week. And that's interesting. And note, that takes place, Bob, in a context where Colin Powell has been criticized now for a couple of weeks pretty intensely by conservative groups and hasn't really responded. So there's another side to what he said.
But as you suggest there, whatever the voters are saying, some of the key institutions in the party, the Christian Coalition under Ralph Reed, James Dobson, who you had an exchange of letters with, the National Rifle Association, the American Conservative Union, they're saying this may not be such a good idea. Should that give him pause about entering the race?
It should only give him pause to this extent. He should realize he's going to take some fire. But Colin Powell has taken unfriendly fire before, real unfriendly fire in Vietnam twice. So I think he knows about that. There's now another argument emerging, which is that he's part of the establishment. Well, there are establishments and there are establishments. There is a conservative establishment, too, which is frankly going a little bonkers right now because the grassroots, the individuals, people who actually vote, happen to like Colin Powell. And so they're saying things like, such as my interest in Powell reads me out of the conservative movement. Well, I don't think so. But at the end of the day, it's what individuals think. And individual conservative Republicans like this man, and they like him for good reason.
You said again this morning, as you had several times, that you wanted to hear more from him before you decide what to do. On abortion, you've made pretty clear what you'd like to hear from him, which is that he would try to discourage it even if he wouldn't want to ban it. Let's talk about some of the other issues where you are at odds with him. Affirmative action. You've been a critic of preferences and racial quotas for 20 years. General Powell has basically said, look, this is a racist society. We still need these kinds of things. What should he say on affirmative action that would make him more acceptable to conservatives?
Let me just add one thing. On abortion, he needs to say more than discourage it. I think he needs to say that 1.5 million abortions a year is a catastrophe, that this has a coarsening effect on the American people. that this is a terrible thing and that he would want to work to limit the number and to get that number down through a variety of means. So show some real sympathy for people who've been working this problem and trying to get those numbers down. But let's take affirmative action. I mean, crises create opportunities. The presence of Farrakhan, it seems to me, invites a Colin Powell to stand up and say, look, this is not the way to go. There's only one way to go in this country, and that's color blindness. Now, if he then said, I'm for set-asides, that would sure cut into the message. That wouldn't be the right way to go. But for him to stand up and say, look, Martin Luther King had it right, and as we've seen in this country over the last 20, 30 years, there's only one way to go, the content of your character, not the color of your skin. Become the heir to King, to King's vision. Say what he said about Farrakhan, which was some very tough language. That very difficult problem in American history, American society, race, can in his person, take on a possibility that we could resolve this thing. If we go Farrakhan's way, it's a disaster.
What about this remark that I just bounced off David Keene a while ago, that Gary Bauer, the Family Research Council, says this is Bill Clinton with ribbons?
That's a very unfortunate remark. I imagine Mrs. Powell would, for one, have some serious comment about that. I expect she thinks he's a good deal better than that. Look, you know, people who read the book realize that this guy is not just a paper shuffler. This guy was down in a helicopter in Vietnam after his second stint volunteering to go back to Vietnam. The helicopter went down, crashed, he got out, he went back to get other people out of that helicopter with the engine still smoldering. He went back a second time. This is not small stuff to the American people. This is a guy who has spent his life saluting the American flag as a soldier, and to characterize that as just bureaucratic paper shuffling is, I think, to belittle one of the most important kinds of careers a person can have in this country.
Do you have any indication that he will decide before Thanksgiving, as some people are saying he should?
Well, I guess consultants say Veterans Day would be a great day, and I suppose it would be. Yeah, I don't know. He's so systematic about these things. But, you know, in this town, with all this attention, everything speeds up. And if I were in Colin Powell's shoes, I think I'd want to decide just to be rid of all of us, you know, all of you guys.
You use the word systematic and deliberative. I was traveling in Florida this week with your friend and successor as Education Secretary, Lamar Alexander, who said that running for president is not a rational decision, by which he meant you can't sit there with a legal pad and tote up the pluses and minuses and come to a decision to run. You've got to have this gut feeling that you are the one person to lead the country. Do you think General Powell has that feeling? And if so, why is it so difficult for him to decide?
My guess is it's a little bit of both. I think he feels he owes so much to this country and has so much to say about this country, about its value, again, unlike Farrakhan, that I think he has to regard his moment here as a special time. But, of course, getting into the fight is something else. Here's a guy who has lived by, you know, duty, honor, and country, and now he looks at something which will become what? Fundraisers, focus groups, cash, you know, and sound bites. That is, in many ways, not an appetizing prospect.
You decided not to run. I mean, most people who have to sort of sit down and ponder this as a sort of a rational decision tend to bend toward not doing it. What do you see, what do you hear from him that makes you think he's going in the other way?
I had a few people urging me to run, not as many as Colin Powell. I had a few people having their book signed by me, not as many as Colin Powell. Look, this is an enormous call, I think, on the part of the country, saying to him, take a serious look at this, General. People like him. They like his character. They like many of the things for which he stands. If he runs, he's not going to run to lose. And I think one suggestion I'd have is these speeches that he's getting a lot of money for. He ought to open one up to the public and give a speech and tell us his views on abortion and tell us his views on affirmative action and tell us his views on the country and race and what we need. Answer his critics, if you will, and then we can all decide.
You know, listening to Ron is saying that he talks to Lamar Alexander and he says he doesn't think Powell would have a chance because you've got to have it in your gut that you're the only person in America that can really run America. Do you think that's what people are sick of in politicians, that they sometimes have the sense that the only people who run anymore is somebody who gets the idea that I'm the only guy in the world who could do this?
Yeah, I think people would like someone who's a little reluctant, perhaps, or at least who has a life or has had a life quite beyond politics. And I think that's part of what's attractive. Look, the career in the military, to a lot of Americans, is a tremendous asset. It's a heck of a lot better than a career as a political consultant.
Cincinnatus for the 1990s.
Cincinnatus, good story. Book of Virtues.
Very quickly, though, has he asked you in your conversations to do anything to try to help mitigate the resistance among conservatives?
Not a bit. He has talked to me, and he talked to me about my decision process, the process I went through with Elaine, my wife. He's talking about the process with his wife, Alma. And then really it was the personal. How did you weigh it? I said, look, I'll tell you one thing I said. You look at the external and the internal. The external is if I stand up and say I'm running, do people laugh you out of town? They don't do that with Colin Powell. Then the test is inside. How badly do you want to do this?
And we're going to leave it there. One final thought today, and the final thought is on just what we've been talking about, Colin Powell and whether he'll run for president. Has it occurred to you, as it did to me the other day, that everyone in politics, and I mean everyone, is talking about the viability of Colin Powell as a candidate, and the fact is that he as a black man has never entered the discussion? When I was a boy, just letting Jackie Robinson play baseball with white people was considered a radical step, and it really wasn't until 1988 and Jesse Jackson that anyone really thought an African-American could be taken seriously in a national campaign for a nomination. Well, it is still a long time until next year's election, but yesterday that CBS News New York Times poll showed that Powell is not only being taken seriously, he is now the favorite of Republicans, and at this point would beat the incumbent Democratic president in a head-to-head contest. And so far, anyway, race seems to be no factor, positive or negative. We still have a long way to go to get race relations right in this country, but whether or not Powell becomes a candidate, the way this debate is being framed also tells us we've come a long, long way. That's our broadcast. John Roberts will have the rest of the day's news tonight on the CBS Evening News. Thanks for watching. We'll see you right here next week on Face the Nation.
In every number, there is a question. Is there life after retirement? How far will your company go? In every number, there is a question. And if you have the vision to see it, an answer. You see numbers, we see opportunities.
To you, it looks like this. To a car thief, it looks like this. And to Ford Motor Company engineers, it looks like the most powerful anti-theft device ever. Only this key sends an electronic code to the engine before it will ever start. So it looks like your new Taurus will be just where you parked it. Ford. Quality is job one.
This portion of Face the Nation was sponsored by the CPA. Never underestimate the value. And by Ford Motor Company, where quality is job one. If you'd like to write to Face the Nation, send your letters to Bob Schieffer, Face the Nation, 2020 M Street Northwest, Washington, D.C., 20036. This broadcast was produced by CBS News, which is solely responsible for the selection of today's guests and topics. It originated in Washington, D.C.
You're on CBS.
A beautiful fireplace is always in style, and Gordon's Fireplace Shop and Home Decor has the best of everything for your fireplace. Yes, Gordon's Fireplace seasonal sale includes fireplace screens, gas fireplaces, and logs. At Gordon's, you can style your home with fine home furnishings and accessories, including a marvelous selection of grandfather clocks on sale at 1/2 off. Take advantage of Gordon's seasonal sale. Gordon's Fireplace Shop at Northeast 33rd and Broadway, right off the Banfield. Gordon's Fireplace Shop, open 7 days a week.
Right now, in some school districts, third graders are learning how to solve this equation. And in some school districts, sixth graders are learning. But there are still some school districts where seniors will receive a diploma.
We don't have to tell you what a hassle it is driving all over town to shop for a car. At Thomasson, you can stroll through 6 dealerships, all on one street, McLaughlin Boulevard. If you don't come see me today, I can't save you any money.